All right, so I didn't come with a really great presentation like some of the people here. This was casual for me, or like I was going to do a demonstration. Although, real quick, I'll say this project I'm about to talk about does release with SBOMs because everybody should be. Um, so proud to be saying that. Um, I'm here to talk about attack surface management, something I've been trying to promote since before they coined the term attack surface management. Uh, it comes from my background where we were told how important situational awareness is and how you need to know what's going on out there, or how are you going to make, frankly, any decisions about what to protect, what to attack. It doesn't really matter what side you're on, you need to have visibility. When I noticed, so when my career took me to private companies and I saw how little visibility they had on what was going on the internet, I was in shock, honestly. And it was so different from the world I had just come from, where the situation was the opposite, where extensive amounts of time and energy were put into understanding what's happening before decisions are made. So I felt, well, this is going to be a great way to work with my customers, right? Is let's come with more visibility so that these meetings and discussions can actually be based on what the heck is really going on out there and what are you doing about it, as opposed to this shiny thing I've got over here looks kind of nice. Maybe we should think about buying it, um, which worked. It was great. And I automated some of that to save me some time with this tool. And I showed it to some people and they said, well, you really should share that with people. More people need this. And I said, all right, I'm not trying to keep it to myself. So I uh, kind of quietly shared it at first, and the response from the community did seem to be as I was told it would be. It seemed to blow up pretty quick, but it also turned into something else. I noticed it. I felt okay, great. We've empowered people to do what I was doing for with my customers, but I realized we needed awareness around this. Like this was an actual problem. Like I said, I was shocked that this was not being treated with the urgency or priority that it should have been. And I wanted to help bring awareness to this problem. That's when OWASP stepped in and said, well, how do you feel about adding this to our portfolio so we can all address this problem? And I said, perfect, right? Because that's exactly what I think needs to happen right now. So that was back in 2017-18 timeframe. And since back then, this was a tool. Like I said, it was automation around this. But now we have, I would say, an even bigger problem, which is now the market has accepted ASM, right? That's another acronym that Gartner has thrown around, and everyone knows what that is now, it seems like. And if you're not, yes, and oh well, there's so many, right? CASM, more than you can keep track of, right? Just like the world likes it. But where was I with this?
Abbreviation.
Well, right, Gartner. So everyone seems to know what this is. The market has accepted this as mainstream. It's important for your security program. But I feel like every time I run into someone and say, "Oh, right, ASM, so that's part of your security program. What does that mean to your program, or what does your function look like, or how does it work within your security program?" I get different answers from every single person I talk to. It's concerning, honestly, how the inconsistency is huge, in my opinion, from one organization to the next of what this means to them, how they implement it, how they use it, where does it fit within their security program and the functions. And to me, what that tells me is I don't think this is being used properly. So everyone is saying, well, yeah, of course we do that so that they don't look like they're not following best practices and things like that. But I don't know if they're really employing it properly to have the positive impact that it should have in their program. So where I've taken this project is this is not just about a tool anymore. I'm trying to, like, for instance, perhaps you've heard about the open asset model, which is our kind of quiet attempt to create a data standard around this so that everyone is kind of treating what they're finding or discovering with their ASM consistently. So if I find something related to your attack surface, I can share this with you, and you would be able to ingest that quickly and easily into your program or your function. We also have the Asset DB, which is an implementation of this that's free and everybody can use this. We have the new collections engine, which is designed around the open asset model so that you are defining your discovery process or your intelligence collection based on the model so that you can say, well, this is the portion of the model we're interested in collecting for and taking action on the findings. All of this is trying to steer in the direction of a more enterprise deployment and, like I said, consistent use and consistent results or value that's being brought to people that are using this. Not to say that our implementations are the only way this can be done. I see it more as an example of how this can be done to lead people in the right direction. So some people have come to me though and said, well, Jeff, back when this was just a tool, it was so easy to use. I could just fire it off from the command line or from my Linux box and, go watch a movie or something and come back and all the data was in front of me. And now it's more complex. So what are we supposed to do about this? Or how am I supposed to use this? I don't have the time, to understand it like you do. So to address this and to show people almost like a recipe book. So how do you stand this up? Like what should this at least kind of look like in your environment? We've created this Amass Docker Compose. Maybe I've done something wrong here, which is for any of you that don't know what this is, or if I'm assuming too much about the audience. So like I said, I came from a history of addressing things like reconnaissance and all this as high priority. I dived into this, you might say accidentally, but we gave it to OWASP, and since then, thousands of people use this every day, right? I mean, thousands of people update this software every single day. They're using it constantly. It's talked about quite a bit. Some people have called it the de facto, tool around internet reconnaissance and things like that, which these all sound like strong claims. We're not trying to say be the only solution in town. I see this, our number one objective, in my opinion, is awareness. It's to show people how we need to be treating this. So, we've been showing people for years, like I said, since this was, I think, called public internet exposure, and things like that. We weren't calling this attack surface management. And I, for the record, don't really like the term attack surface management since I don't see how this is managing your problems per se. I feel like it's more attack surface intelligence because you're really finding out what's going on out there. Like I said, this is about visibility, right? It's about understanding what's happening. You have to manage it or you have to use the data correctly. And that's why on a day where I have more time, maybe you'd like to hear what I think about how communication with other security functions is essential to the success of a program like this. You have to be sharing it with the right people, communicating it with the right people in order for this to be effective, because really you are a producer and you need consumers that are using this effectively every single day in order for it to be successful. But for another time, what I wanted to show you all today is if you feel overwhelmed by the number of components that we're creating as part of this project, or you're not sure how to deploy this in your enterprise environment, then I would urge you to take a look at our beta project that we started up recently, the Amass Docker Compose, which I wanted to briefly show you today to show you how easily it will fire this up for you and how we're trying to take this to a little bit more of a platform type interaction with the software, with the implementation, so that, like, for instance, if you don't feel like you've had the time to understand the open asset model, but you'd like to see what all this data looks like that's being collected, now you can just kind of visualize it in front of you and poke around at it, right? So what I have here tonight is I have a lot of Zoom things in my way. but and I don't know if you can see this. I could probably blow this up so it's easier to see. What's that? Take the phone bigger. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. So I'm in a directory where the Docker Compose has been pulled down, right? So that you went to GitHub and said, clone me this project, and it just gives you default configurations, the Compose configuration itself. It's got some scripts in here that make it so you could bring like GeoIP data to the platform and things like that. So I'm going to fire this up with a command that should be probably similar or familiar to people who have ever used this. So we say Docker Compose, run, amass, enumerate, and then I assume it's no problem for me to enumerate OWASP, right? 5 minutes later. With the right person right here to answer the question. All right, so I'm going to fire this off at OWASP. Now, what you should see is it's going to bring up the whole entire compose, right? So you can see over here, you can see all the containers that are being brought up. It has a lot of things in here that perhaps are familiar to anyone who's created software in an enterprise environment. Like we have central logging, we have Loki. In the future, we're going to have some other things that are going to make it so you can watch all these things that are happening, right? We're going to be bringing all the data back to the system so that, well, because frankly, over the years we've been doing this, there's a lot of pieces to all this, and it's hard to watch everything that's going on. People have questions like, why is it taking longer when we're investigating it this way or at this target? These kinds of things would be easier to answer if we had all the data coming back and we could monitor it more closely. This is happening as part of this project. And it's happening as part of the new engine I mentioned, where all these things are being tracked as the collection is taking place. So right away, that's the other thing. Maybe if you've used this before, you remember you used to have to wait for it to be done before you really could access the data, right? You had to, well, sit there or find something else to do and then come back when it was finished, and then you could enjoy what it found. But right now, this is running, and I can already start looking at it. So if I go over here, actually, maybe it'll just be easier if I, no. So I think it's going to take a little while only because, well, two things. One is there's other data in here, and I don't have everything. Here, I'll select another organization that I know is comfortable with this at the moment. But and I don't have everything re-indexed at the moment, so it's a little slow. But so while we're waiting for OWASP's data to come in, this is Utica University, the university that I'm an adjunct professor at, and I know they're comfortable with me showing you. But what you can see is we can show you. So how many things did we find? How old is this? This is 5 days stale. So maybe soon you'd want to refresh this. But also we can quickly drill into the data. So if this is the first time you've investigated this organization or put eyes on it, you might have questions like, why is Utica University, I don't know, what is it? Got cloud platform assets when they also have Amazon.com or, whatever. And now you can just kind of look over here and say, well, let's find out. What are they doing? And when I click on it, you'll see, well, they've got this one asset in Google Cloud called myimpact.utica.edu. Again, I'm not sure you can see this, but it updates the data that's in the table based on what you've selected over here. Also, if I come back and I say, well, just show me everything again, and I say, all right, well, they seem to have most of their assets here in Utica. I can say, well, show me those things down below. And then all the things that are in Utica, because we selected it from the geomap, show up down below. So it's some convenient things that you couldn't do before that just make it so that if looking at the names and the numbers through the old tools didn't quite do it for you, or it didn't help you understand the attack surface of the organization, now I would say it's a little easier to peruse what you're finding, to understand what's of interest, or, well, just to help you understand how much of this is actually like on-prem versus vendors that they're using and things like that. So by now I would think we'd have the OWASP data. So let's see if it wants to be nice when I click this. Okay, OWASP. So it says it found 53 assets, and they're spread across Google, Flash Start Group, Cloudflare, and Amazon.com. And same thing, we can click on the different networks that they fall into, take a look at what's being hosted there. We could pick geographic locations. And keep in mind, this is just a beta, and it's the first like dashboard we've ever created for this. It's literally brand new, and I'm just trying to tell people about it as soon as possible so that, well, I'm hoping it's going to get people excited about it. I'd love to have more help with it. We're going to be creating more dashboards and visualizations for the platform, like I said, to help you better understand what's going on with this system. I want people to better understand the data that's being collected. I want them to understand how to manage all this so that they can feel confident managing it in their own organizations. I want them to be able to fully access all this data and share it with the right people, as I mentioned earlier, in order to make sure that ASM is actually having a positive impact on these security programs. So I don't want to use up too much time. Where am I, Guy? How much do I got left?
32 seconds.
All right. Well, I'm pretty.
5 minutes or 5 minutes.
All right, good. So maybe this would be a good point, since I've shown you what we've been playing with. Open up the questions. Like, what do you think? What does it make you think? Where would you want us to take it next? The what?
Machine-able format. Mentioned that you want to make it more results, the output more shareable, changeable.
Well, for instance, yes. So if you used our command line tools in the past, it was quite possible that maybe the only thing you received as a result was a bunch of fully qualified domain names, right? Depending on how, say, savvy you were with the tooling. And I would say, well, that's extremely limited, right? That's only one dimension of what's being found out there. And for years, we've been collecting more than that, right? But I'll say it's been a little difficult, or you had to be very familiar with what you were using to know how to pull more out, right? And it wasn't part of this open asset model at the time. It was just kind of something we were collecting, and like I said, if you weren't paying close attention to what we were doing, maybe you just missed it, right? Whereas this, right from the moment you fire this up, you've got the name, you've got the IP address, you have the net block, you have the ASN, you have the organization name. It's all right there in front of you, right? And you can filter on any of these things, right? So each of these columns has filters. You could just say, well, I'm only interested in this organization. And have the data you need right in front of you. I just think that brings the data closer to the users. It helps them understand what we're actually collecting. This is just internet infrastructure, right? It's one piece of what this engine is capable of collecting. It's just the portion of this that we've had time to address so far. But with the open asset model being about anything that can be found on the internet, basically, there's going to be lots of dashboards like this, right? Where it could be you click on this company name and say, show me all the employees that work there, right? Or show me all the credentials we found that are come out were leaked out of that company or something like that.
This is like, I don't know, I'm OG, but there's these things called the yellow pages and the white pages prior to. This is like giving you the yellow pages of the internet. This is such incredible 411. I know hundreds of adversarial researchers that are using this product to make their life a little easier. But when they do go and do assessments, incredible tool, incredible.
Well, I got to admit, even as someone who's seeing this all the time, what gets discovered by this sometimes even spooks me a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so easy to find back doors into companies with this because it sticks out like a sore thumb, especially now with all this visualization where it's like, oh, that little slice in the pie graph there, who are you? And then it turns out to be this, backdoor VPN or something into the organization that is hosted by a local telecom company. It's like there's all sorts of interesting things that pop up.
Well,
but I would argue.
I mean, Target, we don't know what happened to Target, right? Did they use some kind of tool like this to get into Target, do you think? Or
well, I think almost all operations, they say 90% or more of the time preparing for these operations is doing this kind of stuff, right? It's the recon, it's the understanding your target, it's evaluating the best attack vector for the operation. They spend tons of time doing that before they actually pull the trigger, right?
Yeah.
So I would think, yes, they are. But some people have come up to me and said, well, Jeff, it looks like you just made it easier for the bad guys too. And maybe, but would you rather be a company that isn't aware that this is easy to do and then let the bad guys do this and you not realize it?
Companies should be using this also to do their recon to protect themselves. Hey, this is what everyone else is doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No brainer.
You need to know what they're thinking to do in order for you to prepare for those things before they happen, right? That's the point here, really, is prepare yourself for what they're thinking of doing so that you're one step ahead. If you really want to shift left, this is how you shift left. You shift left by thinking like them enough that you're saying, well, I feel pretty confident that we're on top of what's about to happen, right? I mean, there's other meanings to the term, but this is at least what it tends to mean in my world is think like the enemy so that you're just as smart about what's going to happen as they are. Don't sit there in fear waiting for these things to happen. Think like they do, prepare for what they're about to do, and be ahead of the game. All right, I'll close on that, unless we have more great questions.
Website. It's Amass Project. You can find just type AMASS and everything, GitHub. You'll find a lot of places to download it.
Yeah, or to answer your question, I mean, so if you put in OWASP Amass, you'll have no trouble finding it, but you definitely want to check out our GitHub, check out our Discord, right? That's where all the discussions tend to be happening around this.
Hi, my name is Ramshit. I'm from Advisors, but I've used the CLI version of this where it earlier, like in the earlier stages, it used to give a lot, like thousands of domain names, which were active. I see that it's much more refined now. But my question is, how does this compare to Maltego?
To what?
To
Maltego?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
What is the difference?
So I love Maltego. And back before this ever existed, and I was still in that world I told you about with situational awareness, Maltego was our best friend. Every person on certain teams of mine had a license to Maltego, right? But Maltego is a visualization tool, right? It's an investigative tool. It's supposed to visualize your data to help you better understand what's going, like what you know or what you have collected, and then it's for analysis, right? I mean, basically, it's for analysis. We can feed something like Maltego, right? You could take the data right out of the open asset model, give it to Maltego, and if that's the way you want to do it. Then I would say, then do it, right? I mean, I would think before long we'll have transforms from Maltego for the OAM, if they're not already, if someone hasn't already done it already. But this isn't trying to compete with Maltego. And as you see, we're not graphing this really, at least not right now. We're not, Maltego is capable, I think they say, of 10,000 nodes on the graph at one time. We'll never be doing that with our web front ends and stuff like that. So Maltego is an amazing product. I completely support people using it, and we're not trying to compete with that. I think we would fuel what you're seeing in Maltego. Any other questions?
And so for Amass, I use it a lot. I like it.
Good.
But then companies that use that hosted domains like on cloud, this tool cannot really find the domain to use currently as a subject of certificates, the seniors. You have plans on integrating it into the tool.
So we do collect names off of certs, but maybe the reason your experience has been that it feels like it doesn't do that is you have to tell Amass to be in active mode to do that. So the default or the default behavior of Amass is it's a passive tool so that you could, I like to be able to tell people you can use this. It's completely legal, at least in the US, right? With the laws in the United States. There's nothing this will do that will send the authorities to your house or anything. But you start turning active mode on where now you're probing people's property, and it could get different, right? Depending on how they feel about it or how much they want to push back on what you're doing. So I do not turn those things on by default. Now, if you want to turn them on or you feel comfortable with your targets, like your bug bounty programs, you'll probably see that there's a lot of things that it's going to come back with that it didn't before. Well, so we can take this offline if you like, but it has algorithms for how it chooses chunks of them to look at based on findings. Instead of just going through blindly and saying, I'm going to go through a whole /16 right now and take all night to do this, it picks more carefully what portions to look at. Let's talk about it later.
Yeah, Jeff and Alex and I are going to do a pub crawl after this. So if you want to come, we're going to